stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, and it's like the real Tony Stark. It's like back somehow, and there's like a moment where she's flying through, and he's like, "Who is that?" And she's like, "I'm Ironheart, Mr. Stark." And he's like, "I like that girl." And then
Ironheart is the biggest L of Marvel of all time. The reactions are just spectacular. Supposedly he's smarter than Tony Stark, bites an electric wire, sells her soul to gain magic powers, uses new powers to steal. What did the writers mean by this? Smoke detector beeps. Ironheart is practically unwatchable.
They were still in a woman's prison. And so in this, I'm not sure what they're meant to be, because this character isn't to be confused with Slug.
Slug, our hacker extraordinaire.
Who is also the exact opposite in the same show. I'm really confused. I just think it's weird to have a series.
Dominique Thorne, I have seen all of the first 3 episodes of Ironheart. How did this even come about?
What if Marvel just sabotaged its own future? Not because of a failed storyline, not because of weak box office numbers, but because they risked losing one of their most important rising stars. For more than a decade, the Marvel Cinematic Universe stood tall on the back of Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. didn't just play a superhero. He became the face of an entire empire. His charisma, wit, and presence turned Marvel from a comic book experiment into a cultural juggernaut worth billions. But when Tony Stark bowed out in Avengers Endgame, Marvel wasn't just saying goodbye to a character. They were losing their anchor. And in that vacuum, the question became, who could possibly take up the mantle? Who could carry the weight of an entire universe?
Where Downey Jr. pointed out to both Marvel and Disney that this could not only ruin his reputation, but also caused him fans, and he's against making those statements. However, both Bob and Kevin informed him that taking part in these types of statements and the press tour for Ironheart is built into his very expensive contract for the future of the MCU, mostly related to the return in Avengers Doomsday. RDJ is already challenging both Bob Iger and Kevin Feige that he will only make statements defending Ironheart and Riri Williams if it avoids arguments about DEI.
Marvel thought they had the answer. A new hero, a new face. Someone who represented both the intelligence and resilience Tony Stark stood for, but through a fresh, modern lens. That person was Dominique Thorne, cast as Riri Williams, better known as Ironheart. But instead of becoming Marvel's heir to Iron Man, Dominique's journey spiraled into one of the ugliest casting controversies the MCU has ever seen. And the fallout is tearing Marvel apart at the seams.
Yeah, it's all ego. You would never find me with an ego like that, not with my fallopian tubes.
When Tony Stark made his heroic sacrifice in Endgame, it wasn't just the end of an arc. It was the end of Marvel's foundation. Every studio executive knew it. You can't just replace Iron Man. You have to reinvent him. And that's where Riri Williams came in. In the comics, she's portrayed as a young genius who reverse engineers Tony Stark's technology and builds her own suit of armor, proving that brilliance can come from unexpected places. Marvel saw her as the perfect successor, someone who could inherit the mantle without trying to be Iron Man.
It deserves your attention. Ironheart deserves your attention. That's how I knew. I was like, oh, they are desperate to get people to watch this damn show. But after I did my reaction, I kept getting.
And why she's frustrated. That's how I feel watching her interviews.
How do you feel about the impact that she's having on young Black girls? And I'm going to be completely honest, on Black women.
You know, this is yet another area that's getting vibrant. It's getting full in the way that it should be.
Dominique Thorne was tapped for the role, and Marvel positioned her casting as a defining move for Phase 5. They weren't subtle about it either. Interviews, press tours, and early teasers all painted Dominique as the centerpiece of Marvel's rebirth. The language was bold, a prodigy, the future, the genius who could rival Tony himself. The gamble wasn't just that Dominique could perform well. It was that audiences would buy into her as the new face of Marvel. And here's the catch. This wasn't about one show or one character. It was about whether the MCU could survive without its original icons. Marvel wasn't just betting on Dominique. They were betting the house.
Going out there from the media that you are just a racist if you don't like Ironheart. The reason it's getting this backlash, the reason it's getting bad reviews, the reason that fans don't like what they see, it's just because all the damn racists out there, Jay.
That they also had Robert Downey Jr. and they had him roll out and really kind of prop the show up and prop the character of Riri Williams up above Tony Stark and really tried to really have him really as the face of the Ironheart press tour, and it really just backfired completely.
From the beginning, Marvel made sure Ironheart wasn't framed as just another spin-off. This wasn't going to be She-Hulk 2.0 or a side experiment like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Ironheart was sold as a cultural milestone. Marvel emphasized that Riri Williams wasn't just a new character. She was a young black genius stepping into a universe that desperately needed fresh voices. Dominique Thorne's casting was positioned as a groundbreaking moment. The message was clear. This wasn't just about superheroes. This was about representation, evolution, and progress.
Daredevil was a massive disappointment in the ratings for them, certainly. We do know, when you go and you look at through these charts, the first couple days it was out, because we have 3 days of Ironheart in these numbers, just like we had 3 days of Daredevil in these numbers. And Daredevil in those first 3 days had over 300 million minutes watched. So, and that was with less possible runtime than something like Ironheart. Yet we know that it hasn't matched that.
And for a while, the fans believed it. Her brief introduction in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever planted seeds of excitement. She didn't dominate the movie, but her presence was enough to spark speculation. Fans began to imagine her journey, a prodigy rising to stand alongside legends. Disney leaned hard into this narrative, hyping her as the crown jewel of Phase 5. Journalists described her as Marvel's boldest casting move since Robert Downey Jr. himself. Everything about Dominique's role was designed to make audiences believe the MCU still had surprises left. But here's the brutal truth. The higher the hype, the harsher the fall if it doesn't deliver. And when Ironheart's moment finally came, the backlash hit harder than anyone could have expected.
Natalie AI thing seems utterly preposterous and ridiculous, and even for an MCU show, I'm finding it to be a little bit of a bridge too far to go. The heist crew, all lame. Every single one of them, all lame.
When Ironheart's first season landed on Disney+, the expectations were sky high. Marvel envisioned applause, excitement, and headlines celebrating the MCU's rebirth. Instead, what they got was chaos. Critics were lukewarm, offering cautious reviews that avoided extremes. But the fans, they weren't holding back. Comment sections filled up with brutal takes within hours. Memes comparing Dominique's debut to Robert Downey Jr.'s unforgettable Iron Man scenes went viral, and the contrast was painful. Hashtags mocking her as the replacement spread faster than Marvel could react. YouTubers dropped titles like Ironheart's Big Mistake and Why Dominique Can't Carry the MCU. Even accounts that were usually Marvel-friendly struggled to defend the show. The criticism wasn't limited to Dominique's performance, though. Fans ripped into the scripts, calling the pacing dull, the dialogue uninspired, and the supporting cast forgettable. Yet, because Dominique was the face of the series, all the blame funneled straight to her. Worse, the numbers told the same story. In its first 3 days, Ironheart barely made a ripple compared to Marvel's older shows. Daredevil pulled in over 300 million minutes of viewing in the same time frame despite being shorter. Ironheart, meanwhile, stumbled. The message from fans was loud and clear. This wasn't the future they wanted. And whether it was fair or not, Dominique was now the lightning rod for all of it. And then came the rumor that changed everything. Whispers began circulating online that Dominique Thorne might not remain Ironheart for long. The name tied to those whispers? Rachel Zegler, the same actress already in the headlines as Disney's live-action Snow White. At first, it seemed laughable. No way Marvel would pull the plug on Dominique after just one season, right? But the internet thrives on speculation, and it didn't take long for the whispers to snowball. Fan art of Rachel in Ironheart's armor exploded across Twitter and TikTok. Edits painted her as the savior of the MCU, a charismatic star who could supposedly deliver what Dominique couldn't. Hashtags like #recast Ironheart and #Rachel is Ironheart trended globally. And then Rachel herself seemed to pow. Gasoline on the fire, posting a simple Instagram selfie with suspicious red and gold reflections in the background. No caption, no explanation, just enough for Marvel fans to connect the dots. To them, it looked like a deliberate tease, almost a confirmation. Suddenly, the debate shifted from if Rachel would take over to when. Dominique's future, once hyped as secure, now looked fragile, and the fandom was ready to explode. For weeks, Dominique stayed quiet as the rumors swirled. No statements, no interviews, no denials. At first, it seemed like she was keeping her cool, rising above the noise. But silence doesn't last forever. Then, out of nowhere, her Instagram lit up with cryptic posts. One read, "People love to replace you before you're even gone." Fans instantly tied it to Rachel. Minutes later, screenshots of the post spread across Twitter, sparking endless debates. Was Dominique calling out Marvel, Disney executives, or Rachel herself? Then came another post. "They'll smile in your face and plan your exit behind your back." The implications were clear, and just when fans thought things couldn't get spicier, Dominique dropped a bombshell tweet. Funny how people pretend to know the whole story when all they've seen is a trailer. "Good luck with your new Ironheart." Within an hour, the tweet was deleted, but the internet never forgets. Screenshots went viral. For Dominique's supporters, this was proof she had been betrayed. For her critics, it was proof she was unprofessional. The lines were drawn. The fandom was no longer debating the show's quality. They were debating Dominique Thorne herself. What started as a rumor became a full-blown cultural war. On one side, Team Dominique, fans who argued she had been set up to fail. They pointed to weak scripts, poor direction, and impossible comparisons to Robert Downey Jr. as the real villains. Viral TikToks defended her. "She's not Tony Stark. She's Riri Williams. She deserves time to grow." Hashtags like "Justice for Dominique" and "She is Ironheart" trended in her defense. On the other side, Team Rachel, who saw her as Marvel's only hope. They highlighted her Broadway background, her vocal performances, and her undeniable charisma on stage and in interviews. "Rachel can carry a franchise," one viral tweet declared. Petitions demanding Rachel replace Dominique hit hundreds of thousands of signatures. YouTubers pumped out content titled, "Why Rachel is the Future of Marvel." Even meme accounts that once backed Dominique pivoted to Rachel edits. The battle wasn't just online. At fan conventions, the tension spilled into real life. Panels about Marvel's future were interrupted with shouts of Team Dominique and boos at Rachel's name. What should have been cosplay celebrations turned into battlegrounds. The fandom wasn't debating storylines anymore. They were fighting over identity, loyalty, and betrayal, and Marvel had no way to contain it. The chaos wasn't just on Twitter. According to insiders, the division was just as bad inside Marvel Studios. Executives and creatives split into two camps. One side, the loyalists, argued Dominique deserved another chance. They said Season 1's failures weren't her fault. Weak writing, rushed production, and sky-high expectations had set her up to stumble. Even Robert Downey Jr. didn't nail Tony Stark perfectly in his first movie, they reminded. Dominique just needed time to grow. But the other side, the realists, looked at cold numbers. Audience reception was brutal. Petitions with hundreds of thousands of signatures couldn't be ignored. Hashtags trended daily demanding her replacement. To them, the solution was obvious. Dominique had lost the fan base. Waiting longer risked dragging Marvel deeper into decline. The split was so severe that reports claimed Marvel commissioned 2 versions of Ironheart's second season. One keeping Dominique in the lead, with Rachel introduced as a side character, and one phasing Dominique out while Rachel took over. Think about that. 2 entire scripts, 2 possible futures, being developed in secret. because Marvel didn't know which direction to take. It wasn't just about creative choices anymore. It was about the identity of the MCU itself. If the drama was boiling behind closed doors, it was even worse on set. Insiders claimed Marvel tried to keep Dominique and Rachel apart during early test shoots, staggering schedules to avoid clashes. But that plan didn't last. One afternoon, Dominique arrived unannounced, only to find Rachel already filming in a prototype Ironheart suit. Witnesses said the silence was heavier than any script. Dominique froze, staring at Rachel in armor that was supposed to be hers. Without a word, she turned and walked out. That night, fans noticed Dominique unfollowed Marvel's official Instagram account. Hours later, every behind-the-scenes Ironheart photo disappeared from her page. The message was clear. She wasn't just upset, she was done. From then on, the set split into factions. Some cast and crew backed Dominique, saying she'd been sabotaged with weak scripts. Others sided with Rachel, praising her professionalism and energy. What should have been Marvel's next big blockbuster started to feel like a battleground. Even department heads and producers reportedly took sides, making meetings feel like power struggles. The atmosphere grew so tense that the show stopped feeling like a production and started feeling like a war zone. And all the while, the fandom outside kept fueling the fire. By now, the fight over Ironheart had gone beyond one role. It was no longer just about Dominique versus Rachel. It was about Marvel's entire identity. Dominique symbolized representation, progress, and loyalty. Dropping her would spark outrage, not just from fans, but from journalists and cultural critics who saw her casting as historic. But keeping her meant risking another season of backlash, weak numbers, and a narrative that Marvel was stuck in. Decline. Rachel, meanwhile, represented visibility, charisma, and star power. She came with her own controversies, but also undeniable attention. Choosing her might revive the franchise, or it might deepen Marvel's cultural wounds. This wasn't just a casting dilemma, it was a crossroads. Every path carried risk, every decision carried backlash, and whichever way Marvel leaned, the fallout wouldn't just shape Ironheart, it would echo across the entire MCU. For the first time since Endgame, Marvel wasn't in control of the story. The fandom was. Dominique Thorne was once hailed as Marvel's future, the prodigy who would inherit Iron Man's legacy and carry the MCU into its next era. But in just one season, that dream unraveled into backlash, rumors, and a casting battle so divisive, it's tearing the fandom apart. On one side, you have Dominique's defenders, saying she was doomed from the start by weak scripts and impossible expectations. On the other, Rachel's supporters, framing her as the star who can bring Marvel back to life. Behind the scenes, executives are split. On set, tensions simmer. Online, the war rages daily. What should have been Marvel's next milestone has become its biggest gamble. And now, the question isn't just who will play Ironheart. The question is, what does this say about Marvel itself? Will Disney stand by Dominique, honoring the promises they made when she was cast? Or will they roll the dice on Rachel Zegler, hoping star power can save a franchise already accused of losing steam? One thing's for certain, this isn't just about superheroes anymore. It's about representation, loyalty, and the very future of Marvel storytelling. So now it's your turn. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Team Dominique or Team Rachel? Because whatever Marvel decides, this battle is far from over.